The sun was sinking low, a molten coin bleeding red into the horizon, and the land stretched endless and weary beneath it. Dust carried on the wind whispered like ghosts, and the prairie grasses bent as if in mourning. A rider moved slow along the trail, his horse's hooves thudding dull against the hard-packed earth. He was a man of middle years, weathered and carved by silence more than words, his face shadowed beneath the brim of his hat. Jedediah Carson had lived alone long enough to forget the sound of laughter, long enough to forget what it meant for someone to look at him with anything other than suspicion or passing need. He was a cowboy of no renown, no riches, no family waiting. Only the land knew his name. As the light began to fade, a sound not of the prairie reached his ears, sharp against the hush of evening. It was a cry. Not the cry of coyotes or hawks, but human, small, piercing, raw with a kind of terror no man could mistake. Jed pulled on the reins, his horse slowing to stillness. He listened. Another cry followed, broken by sobs, weaker now but urgent. He nudged his horse off the trail, through sparse brush, down toward a cluster of bare-boned trees, whose limbs clawed at the sky like hands begging mercy. There he found them. Against the gnarled trunk of a dying oak sat a woman, slumped, her skin pale as if all the blood had drained away. Her dress, once sturdy calico, was torn and dirt-stained, her hair dark and matted with sweat and dust. Her chest rose in shallow, painful breaths. Clinging to her with both arms was a little girl, thin as a reed, her cheeks streaked with tears and grime. The child's eyes, wide and frantic, lifted at the sound of the horse. She screamed, voice splitting the air. "Kill us fast, we can't bear the pain no more." Jed felt something shift inside his chest, a heaviness that was not his own but theirs, pressed upon him. He dismounted slow, cautious. The girl clutched her mother tighter, trembling. She repeated herself, voice cracking, desperate. "Please, mister. End it. End it now." The mother stirred faintly, lifting her head. Her eyes opened, blue but dulled, fevered. She tried to hush her daughter, but no strength found her lips. Her hand trembled against the child's hair. Jed crouched, his shadow stretching long across them, and for the first time in years his throat ached with words. "Child," he said softly, his voice rough but steady, "I ain't come to harm you." The girl shook her head violently, not trusting. Her small body was all bone and fright, her face streaked with salt. Her eyes flicked to the revolver at his hip. She whispered again, but weaker now. "Kill us. Please." Jed did not reach for the gun. Instead, he unhooked the canteen from his saddle, uncapped it, and placed it on the ground between them. The girl looked at it as if it might vanish. The mother stirred again, and with trembling fingers, reached toward it. Her hands shook so badly she could not grasp it. Jed lifted it carefully, tilting it to her lips, and she drank with a small gasp, water spilling down her chin. The girl watched wide-eyed, as if waiting for a trick. When she saw no cruelty follow, she let go of a breath she'd been holding. He set bread from his satchel beside them, rough but fresh, baked days before. The girl looked from the food to his face, searching. Hunger warred with fear, and hunger won. She snatched it with both hands, broke a piece for her mother, then stuffed the rest into her mouth like an animal that had not known kindness for too long. The mother chewed slow, barely able, but her eyes closed in relief. Jed did not press them with questions. He did not ask what had brought them here, abandoned and broken. He only waited, kneeling in the dust, watching as the girl slowly calmed, her sobs quieting with each swallow. When at last she lifted her face again, her voice was smaller, almost ashamed. "My mama's hurt bad. She ain't moved for near 2 days. I try to find help but—" Her words crumbled, her lip trembling. She wiped at her cheeks with dirty hands. Nobody came. Jed studied the mother's breathing, shallow but steady now. Fever burned her skin. He could feel it in the air around her. Her ankle was swollen, wrapped clumsily with cloth torn from her dress, dark with dried blood. He understood enough. They had been left to die. "What's your name, child?" he asked gently. She hesitated. Then, "Clara." "And your mama?" The woman stirred faintly, her voice like a whisper from another world. "Mary Ellen." Jed nodded, as if carving their names into memory. He shifted, his knees stiff, and looked out across the empty prairie. No campfires glowed, no wagons moved. Whoever had cast them out was gone far. And here they were, alone. Clara looked at him with that same wild desperation, her voice breaking as she repeated the words that first cut him. "Please, mister. We can't bear pain no more." Jed met her gaze, steady, unflinching. His words came slow, but each one carried weight. "You'll bear it, little one. And I'll bear it with you." For a long moment, the wind was the only sound. The child blinked, confused by mercy. Her lip trembled, but her hands clutched the bread tighter, as if it anchored her. The mother let out a faint sigh, her head resting against the tree. Jed rose and moved to his horse. He returned with a blanket, coarse but clean, and draped it around them. He lifted the mother with a strength that was steady, careful not to jolt her wounds. Clara cried out in panic, fearing he might take her away, but when she saw how gently he cradled her mother, she followed close, gripping his leg as if tethering them together. He set Mary Ellen across the saddle, mounted behind, and lifted Clara into his arms. The girl pressed her face into his chest, her sobs returning, but softer now, muffled by exhaustion. He whispered to the horse, and they rode slow into the falling dark. The prairie night closed around them, stars cutting sharp and endless overhead. The wind cooled, carrying scents of sage and dust. Jed rode with purpose, the cabin not far but far enough for the weight of 3 lives to press heavy on his heart. He had long thought himself immune to such weight, but now he felt each breath of the woman against his arm, each tremble of the girl against his chest, as if they had been carved into him. When at last the small shape of his cabin came into view, weathered wood and a single lantern glowing faintly, Jed felt something stir within him. Not relief exactly, but a sense of arrival, not just to shelter, but to a crossing in his own life. He dismounted, carried Mary Ellen inside, laid her gently upon his own bed. Clara followed, her eyes darting at the strange place, but her fear was tempered now by fatigue. He lit a lamp, warm light spilling across rough-hewn walls. The cabin was sparse, one room with a stove, a table, a chair, and the bed. No sign of family, no sign of softness. Until tonight. He tended Mary Ellen's wounds, washed them with clean water, bound them with fresh cloth. She stirred faintly but did not resist. Clara sat close, watching every movement, as if learning whether to trust this man who had appeared like a ghost from the prairie. Hours passed, the fire in the stove crackling soft, the night deepening. Jed sat in his chair, his rifle leaning unused by the door, his hat resting on the table. Clara curled beside her mother, clutching the blanket he had given. Her eyes heavy, but she fought sleep, whispering now and again to keep her mother tethered to this world. Mary Ellen murmured faint responses, her breath shallow, but steadier. At last Clara's voice cracked with one final whisper. "Don't let her die, mister. Don't let her go." Jed leaned forward, elbows on his knees, and his voice came quiet, low as embers. "She ain't going nowhere tonight. Not while I'm here." The girl's eyes closed at last, her small body surrendering to sleep. The mother stirred faintly, her lips parting as if to speak, but no sound came. Jed sat long into the night, his gaze shifting between them and the fire, listening to the fragile rhythm of their breathing, knowing something had begun here that he could not yet name. The loneliness of years past pressed upon him, but it was met now with a new weight, unfamiliar, unchosen, yet undeniable. And in the stillness as the fire dimmed and the stars turned above, Jed Carson felt the old world of silence give way to something else. A vow unspoken, a bond born not of words but of need. The prairie outside lay vast and empty, but within those 4 wooden walls, the story of 3 lives had entwined, fragile but fierce, against the endless dark.